Yeah, I mean, so my grandfather, on my dad's side, was a Pentecostal Assemblies of Newfoundland minister,
Mm-hmm.
um, which is East Coast Pentecostalism is generally a little more hardcore,
Right.
but it's still pretty hardcore out here. Like when I went to, like I said, a mega church in Windsor, and it was intense. Um, the Yeah, it's a pretty insular culture. As I say, cult is a word I'll to give people a kind of an idea.
Sure.
I don't know. It's not actually. It's not like a you can't leave cult,
Mm.
but it has elements of very much an insularness. I grew up not allowed to listen to secular music,
Okay.
which kind of explains me today. The Yeah, it's a very strict interpretation of the Bible. Um, a very They call themselves literalists, although that's insane because they wear clothing of more than one color and cut their hair.
And also, the part of the Bible they focus on most was written like 500 years after the rest of it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's all very complicated.
Yeah.
But there's good people. I mean, there's
No, no,
of
yeah,
course,
yeah.
but like, there's a lot of good intentions and a lot of actions that can be damaging. And I mean, we'll get personal. I'm a queer person.
Okay.
It took me a long, long time to come out because my queerness is a complex thing. I'm not gay. I'm not straight. I'm bi, pan, poly, whatever.
Sure.
Not poly, but like
It's complicated
it's
in 2019.
complicated. One of my favorite quotes ever was, do you know the show Community?
I'm aware of it, yeah.
There's a scene, the dean, who's like this character, somebody says to him, "Wait, you're gay, aren't you?" And he goes, "It's not that simple." He's like, "If coming out is a magic show and gayness is a rabbit out of the hat, I'm one of those never-ending scarves," which warms my heart to this day. I love that line. Anyway, so
that's an issue growing up.
for sure. And I mean, so I spent a lot of time repressing, and I came out much later in life than a lot of people do.
How old were you when you found out?
Late 20s.
How old were you when you sort of knew that it was a thing that you had to deal with eventually?
Oh fuck! It's like it's super. Always slash
Never.
later. It's complicated.
Yeah. No, well, the
Yeah.
reason I ask is we when we were in St. Catharines, we sat down with musician Anthony Sweet, and he grew up in kind of sort of similar circumstances. He grew up just outside of the Black Forest in Germany,
Right.
in a very small, like 400 people, kind of like small community, and his parents were out there because they were missionaries, right? So it was hyper religious,
Yeah.
in a foreign country. I mean, he grew up in Germany, so it wasn't foreign to him, but it was like his parents had come into a different country. He's isolated. He grows up in one of these sort of like circumstances where the people who he trusts the most in his life sort of look at what he's discovering as his lifestyle being against what they do.
Right.
And it's complicated, like coming out as gay or whatever in 2019 is complicated just on its own. When you start adding all of the other pieces to it.
Right.
Was it like, the reason I ask is, I wonder, as you were growing up, because you always hear the stories of people, not always, but some of the stories that you hear of people coming out, is that sort of like, well, I had that moment where I finally had to, where I came out to mom and dad or whatever.
Right.
I'm more kind of interested in the internal dialogue, the like figuring it out on your own before you even get to a point where you're going to be like,
Right.
no, this is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was a long, slow process. I mean, I am attracted to women, so I got to spend a lot of my teenage years in being very involved in the Christian culture I was in. Like I wasn't like my parents made me go. I was in it. I was like a dedicated
okay.
Christian kid, like I think if anybody who hasn't seen me in 15 years and like knew me then would be like, who the fuck is this guy talking about me now? Like, like I was always kind of rebellious and always kind of intellectually pushing at the boundaries of all that, but it was still, I'm not going to pretend like I was outside of that world. I was totally in that world. So,
Right.
but I had this internal struggle of like, oh, I have this boy who's a friend who I have maybe feelings for, like crushes. You have crushes as you do when you're young. And then like, and processing that, and just, I mean,
It's almost
just
more interesting
repression.
to me that you were so into it, like that.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
You know what I mean? That's almost, that part of it is more interesting to
I
me.
mean, yeah, I thrive in a structure, I guess. Like I did well. I find something I like, and like having rules to push, and you know, I did well in audio college. You know,
It seems like mom and dad were still pretty loving either way.
Yeah, I mean, I have great parents. My parents now are quite liberal and are really accepting. Yeah. It's funny. My whole family went on this like journey, kind of
through
like,
your change.
No, I mean, my brother and I are like we're both kind of free thinkers, and as we entered our like 20s and stuff, got more and more and more liberal till neither of us were really attending a church anymore, and like whatever spiritual, I don't want to speak for him, whatever spirituality we had is much more abstract than would fit in a capital C Christian box. It took me a long time to stop caring about what I labeled myself. For a long time I was like, oh, I'm agnostic, or I'm atheist, or you know, all this stuff, because your confession, your what you profess yourself to be is a big part of Christianity, and you always understand the world as everybody has a thing they are. Instead of just a fucking human.
Right.
And so it took me a long time to let go of, like, at first it was like letting go of Christianity and labeling myself as something else. And then it took a really long time to be like, just let go of that.
Don't forget, you can subscribe to our full audio episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere you find your audio podcasts. The full episodes, highlights, and our live off-the-floor performance videos can be found at our YouTube channel, and you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at the AVB Podcast. Of course, you'll find links to our incredible sponsors and this week's guest in the description below. The AVB Podcast is part of the Border City Network. Find more great content at bordercitynetwork.com. See you next time, folks. Bye-bye.